here's something that might blow your mind. The PS4 has been getting new games for longer than the PS1 ever did, and judging by how many games are still coming out for it in 2024, it may just outlast the PS2 as well. With that in mind, we've consulted the vast annals, the grand libraries, the ancient tomes, okay, we will stop there now, to find the best PS4 games of all time, keeping the list to one entry per franchise. Number 25, Yakuza Like a Dragon. Any regular viewers are probably sick of seeing the Yakuza, now known as Like a Dragon games, being featured on lists like this, but there's no denying their excellence. While the first 7 mainline games which followed Kazuma Kiryu are all available on PS4 too, albeit with some just being PS3 ports, it's Yakuza Like a Dragon, these names confusing, aren't they? That serves as the best that the PS4 has to offer. Introducing a whole new protagonist in the form of Ichiban Kasuga, Yakuza Like a Dragon sees the low-ranking member of the Tojo clan taking the fall for another's crime, only to find himself abandoned 18 years later when leaving the clink. With a burning desire to find his patriarch and seek out the truth, Ichiban bands together with a few unlikely allies, proving that the power of friendship is stronger than even the toughest of underworld bosses. Despite how dark and gritty the franchise can get sometimes, Yakuza Like a Dragon included in that, Ichiban's optimism and faith in his friends gives this game a hopeful tone that's hard not to enjoy. Number 24, Final Fantasy VII Remake. A game that was announced possibly a smidge too early, Final Fantasy VII Remake began to feel like a game that would never actually come out. It's, kind of surreal that it's actually now out, even more so that it turned out to be damn good, and has a sequel that also came out and also turned out to be really good, despite the timey-wimey stuff. More of a remix of the original game than a one-for-one remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake changes things up a lot, whether that's the combat, storyline, or most noticeably, of course, visuals. It nails almost everything new it tries. That's right, including squats. Ostensibly focusing on just the first disc of the original game, the extra detail poured into Final Fantasy VII Remake makes it one of the PS4's best love letters to the RPG genre as a whole, and more than just an easy, safe trip down nostalgia lane. Hey, apropos of absolutely nothing at all, did you want to hear some really cool PS1 facts? Number 23, Devil May Cry 5. While no two people will probably ever be able to agree on DMC 2013, I mean, it's fun at least, isn't it? Gotta say it's fun. The return to the original narrative really pays off for Devil May Cry 5, the most explosive and possibly most fun game in the franchise to date. And let's not forget, most insane. That's high-key pretty important when it comes to telling a story about a one-armed Tony Crews in his camper van, Matthew McConaughey doing a Michael Jackson tribute act, and Adam Driver with a really bad cold. With 3 protagonists to play as and one who is just a total SSS factory, Devil May Cry 5 offers a glorious cacophony of violence and metal that will transport you all the way back to your teenage years. If you're a dedicated Devil May Cry fan, you'll be totally in your element here. It's like 3 met 4 and then turn the dial up to 11 on all fronts. But if you aren't a DMC fanatic already, maybe go play the earlier games so you aren't a little baffled when dudes keep getting absorbed into each other every other minute. It's a real problem in these games, man. It's a real problem. Number 22, hell yeah, it's Astro Bot Rescue Mission. Hands up if you thought that a VR platformer featuring the PlayStation 4's forgotten mascot would be not only one of the best virtual reality games ever made, but also one of the console's best ever? Our hands are, to be completely honest, firmly down on this one, which made Astro Bot Rescue Mission even more of a joy. Appealing to anyone who's ever played a collectathon platformer, Astro Bot Rescue Mission tasks you with tracking down a ton of missing robots after an alien wreaks havoc. You'll visit many different locales with plenty of secrets to find and cuteness overloads that will make you want to vomit, but in the best way possible. It's a game that's been specifically designed to make you smile every other minute, so it's almost a shame, kind of, that it's restricted to VR only, but it's a pretty good selling point of virtual reality as a whole. It's like 7 years on and I've barely played any VR games anywhere near as good as this. A true shot of optimism straight to the heart of our all too cynical modern world. If you need more of that, play Astro's Playroom on PS5 and then pre-order 6 Australian copies of Astrobot on PS5 as well. Number 21, Horizon Zero Dawn. A game so good it could get away with having a terrible name. No, it doesn't have a colon in it for some reason, or cars. Horizon Zero Dawn looked like it could at least be pretty interesting when it was first revealed, but it wasn't expected to be this beloved. It feels and sometimes plays like Breath of the Wild cousin, except if Link was a bit of a yapper. All our love to Aloy still, of course. If you want to know what Horizon is all about, here's the simple version. You hunt dinosaur robots in a post-apocalyptic setting as a warrior with great hair. There's a pretty good story to unravel here, dealing in ancient corporate Tom Dickery and more twists than a Forza Horizon race. Again, this one has no cars. If you're searching for one of the most fun open world PS4 games that lets you climb up a giant robot giraffe, check out Zero Dawn, and then Forbidden West afterwards, also on PS4 if you also want to fly on a giant bird, but it isn't quite as good overall because the story... Speaking of polarizing stories, number 20, The Last of Us Part 2. Okay, listen. It's no stretch at all to say that The Last of Us Part 2 was perhaps the most controversial first-party game of the entire generation. Maybe the most controversial game overall, single-player game, maybe? A lot of us here have some pretty mixed feelings on it overall. Monumental leaks beforehand that lacked some context didn't really help, neither did some of the game's pacing and the lack of control over key moments. However, it's undeniable that The Last of Us Part 2 represents quite possibly the most ambitious, challenging storyline ever put into a game while still remaining grounded. Pun somewhat intended. Significantly longer than its predecessor, with unforgettable twists and some very brave choices made at around the halfway mark, The Last of Us Part 2 isn't a game that can just be shrugged off. With an incredible eye for detail and some of the industry's best dramatic performances, we may not be its absolute biggest fans here, but we still think it's maybe the game here that's worth experiencing at least once just to see for yourself what it's all about. Let's put it like this, you're not going to walk away from it with nothing to say. Number 19, Resident Evil 2. It's hard to get remakes right, especially those for properties that are basically untouchable. Luckily for us, Capcom approached the Resident Evil 2 remake with as much care and attention as a brand new game, while also staying close to what made the original game such an undoubted favourite. That magical Ori engine has done absolute wonders for Capcom as a company, hasn't it? A major overhaul sees Resident Evil 2 looking every inch the modern game while also playing like one of the most frightening games of its generation. No easy feat considering you're a lot less vulnerable this time around. Treasure the time you have before Mr. X lifts up that helicopter and stomps his way towards you in one of the scariest horror games your money can buy. And then absolutely remain dry as a bone as you play through the game for the 13th time as you try and speedrun your way towards that platinum trophy. You can also play the Resident Evil 3 remake after this, but let's just say that if this game wasn't quite so damn brilliant, Resident Evil 3 might not have been quite so disappointing. And hey, if you want to put Resident Evil 4 or 7 in here instead, that's totally fine by us. Number 18, Dark Souls 3. packed with the kind of detail that comes as standard with From Software games, lore that deserves to be dived into. By that we mean watch a 5-hour YouTube essay at the kind of sites that haunt your nightmares. Dark Souls 3 also represented the sleekest, fastest combat of all the Dark Souls games, with far less of that annoying time wasting, i.e. running back for 10 hours just to get bodied immediately by the boss. And how about those bosses you're running back to with your tail between your legs, which are probably the best across all of Souls? Few can forget the agonising spectacle of taking on the Nameless King, who absolutely isn't getting a Christmas card off me this year. Why don't I get a dragon, Miyazaki? Isn't it time? Give me my dragon. And stop dragging your nuts across my face. While most Souls fans feel it's a big improvement on the second game, few can agree on whether it surpasses the original or not. Luckily for you, Dark Souls Remastered is also on PS4, and even though it does a lot of weird things by more conventional standards of the day, the second game is also an experience all its own that's worth getting through. If you can get through those fucking fog doors, that is. Number 17, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. Naughty Dog seem to revel in throwing gorgeous vistas and extravagant set pieces at players every few minutes, making Uncharted 4 one of the best PS4 games at showing off the console's potential. Even 8 years on, this could honestly be released today and nobody would bat an eyelid. It'll probably still hold up for the next 5 years or more as well. So yeah, perhaps it does lean too heavily on its cinematics, and maybe it doesn't do anything that new to further the gameplay basics of the series apart from a fairly sick grappling hook, but there's no denying that Uncharted 4 is an awesome spectacle from beginning to end. And how about the first time you come across that horizon in Madagascar? Pure popcorn PlayStation. With perhaps the strongest and perhaps most grounded story in the franchise to date despite its massive scale, it's easy to get sucked into the family drama of Uncharted 4. There's also the traditional amount of death-defying stunts and jumps to make, but the game's highlight? Definitely playing Crash Bandicoot. Fun fact, that bit wasn't just ported, it was completely remade for the game, so technically Naughty Dog has been making Crash Bandicoot games again. Technically. There's still hope, Jackers, there's still hope. Number 16, Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is a curiously brilliant game, just in the sense that while it sold millions and millions of copies, it seems that not enough people appreciate just how brilliant it actually is. Yes, it bears the hallmarks of a lot of open world games over the years, but the way Sucker Punch mixes familiar elements with frankly brilliant innovations cannot be overlooked. Whether it's the wind being the marker for your destination, the always satisfying showdowns, or the ability to make friends with foxes, Ghost of Tsushima really is special. Chuck in a post-launch PvE multiplayer mode that offers even more content and the game becomes a deep cut indeed. Once you've made your way through the trees and into the glade for one of the most astounding title cards in video game history, you'll understand why Ghost of Tsushima is so deserving of its love. Then look forward to a truly epic, heart-rending story dealing in honour and family, and wonder why the wind has suddenly blown all this water onto your cheeks. God damn it. Wind. You can also get the director's cut of this game on PS5, but Tsushima's PS4 version really isn't too far behind. It somehow has SSD fast travel loading times without, the SSD. It's magic what they did with this game. Number 15, Nier Automata. A crazily dense game with more layers than an onion wrapped up for winter, held by David Lynch, who is stranded on the Lost Island. Nier Automata is a real joy. You're always bound to come across something unexpected, as once you think you've got it all figured out, it changes itself. It's basically a chameleon of a video game. Blending several genres and styles into one wild experience, Automata is an easy recommendation even if you haven't played its cult predecessor. Better yet, it keeps on giving, so once those end credits roll for the first time, be prepared for another go around, and then another, and another, and then some DLC that lets you batter the Square Enix CEO. Probably deservedly, to be honest. Basically, Automata is the gift that just keeps on giving in its weird and wonderful ways, going from character action to shmup to platformer at will, and being brilliant with each one, and also making you question your humanity at the same time. Once you're done with this bit of brilliance, be sure to check out Replicant right after, then gaze into Yoko Taro's cold eyes and wish for him to leave the mobile stuff behind. You're better than that, mate. Number 14, Persona 5 Royal.
Persona! Zoro! It's almost scary how good I am. It's almost scary.
It took its sweet ass time, but the wait was worth it. Persona 5 dropped early in 2017 to the sound of many holiday requests being filed at once. A gigantic success, Atlus's massive life sim RPG balances outright weirdness, a gripping story, and some seriously iconic menus. Yes, we are big menu guys around here, to make it one of the most addictive games on the market. Finally breaking the franchise out of its cult status and into as close to the mainstream as such a balmy franchise can get, Persona 5 sees you playing as Joker, who wakes up and discovers he has special powers backed up by the Phantom Thieves of Hearts. While the original release from 2017 stands as one of the best RPGs on the entire platform in its own right, Persona 5 Royal is the improved version, with up to 30 hours of additional content, a whole new storyline and post-game section if you're gunning for the true ending. You've got an RPG in Persona 5 Royal that isn't for those short on time. If you've got a spare month and feel like neglecting all of your personal responsibilities at once, this is the game for you. Who needs personal hygiene when there's hearts to steal? You can also play one of about 16 different spin-offs of this once you're done with it as well. Number 13, Dead Cells. An uncompromising blend of old and new conventions, Dead Cells is a love letter to the likes of Castlevania with a gorgeous aesthetic and suitably bastardly difficulty. Also, you're playing as a suit filled with jelly kinda stuff. While those with previous experience in the Metroidvania and roguelite subgenres will come to grips with this suitably gripping Roguevania pretty quickly, everyone else may find the climb to be a pretty damn uphill one. Once you feel good at Dead Cells, however, it's irresistible. Every inch of progress feels like it should be celebrated, or when you finally overcome a boss that you will later grow to view as nothing other than a slightly beefier grunt. There's a great sense of progress in Dead Cells as you'll sink dozens of hours into it without even realising, constantly pushing yourself forward to get just one more permanent unlock. Developers Motion Twin have even put so many updates into this thing that they even managed to collaborate with Castlevania itself thanks to some pretty excellent DLC. Treasure it, because it's probably all we're gonna get in terms of Castlevania games for quite a while. Number 12, Marvel's Spider-Man.
MJ, did you make it out? Yeah, everyone's safe.
It's been a long time coming for Spider-Man fans to wait to see a game that gets at least close to emulating the feeling of web-swinging excellence found in the PS2 Spider-Man 2, without a long line of asterisks. Though, Web of Shadows and Shattered Dimension fans, you are seen and you are heard. Marvel's Spider-Man provided exactly what many had been missing for years, as well as a whole host of web-based content to keep you entertained for many more hours after its excellent story concludes. Playing as a Spider-Man who's been around the block for a while, the game wastes no time in throwing you into the action which feels like a sped-up version of the Arkham series. Should Arkham Knight have made its way onto this list? Be sure to let us know down below. With plenty of appearances from Marvel Legends and some of the most beautiful visuals you're likely to see, so much so that its PS5 remaster doesn't really do much apart from change Peter Parker's entire head, Marvel's Spider-Man is simply one of the best superhero games there is, with a really gripping story to boot that honestly is a lot more concentrated and probably better than its sequel. It's the best-selling PS4 console exclusive for a good reason. Sorry, Knack 2, we know how you long to feel God's light once again. Miles Morales is also well worth checking out if you haven't yet. Number 11, Hades. It's no surprise that two of the last generation's biggest indie games make their way into the upper echelons of our list, as both Hades and Dead Cells represent two games created with nothing but love. Hades feels like it was made by a team of 100 people, but in fact it was only 20. That's how much care and attention has been poured into this absolute epic. You play as Zagreus, the son of the titular Hades, who is looking to escape the underworld. Whether you're using a conventional sword or a ancient gun, you'll battle your way through challenging, shifting rooms, upgrading as you go, and constantly chasing that high of besting your previous runs. But dying isn't all bad in Hades, as it gives you a chance to dive into the game's deep, incredibly inviting lore and chat to some of the most affable characters across all of gaming. Who knew the personification of death could be such a charming boy? With an absolute whipper of a soundtrack, incredibly versatile combat that's always changing from one run to the next, and more words than most Odysseys, Hades is an absolute gem on PS4. Number 10, Doom Eternal. Few people had high hopes for Doom 2016, but it smashed all of them and then set a pretty high bar for Eternal to clear. But could it? Well, being number 9 is probably a little hint that this sequel did a little platforming section all over everyone's expectations. The action is faster and more experimental, with it rewarding an even more aggressive attitude. The scale is somehow even bigger, and you get to shoot a hole into the surface of Mars. There's even so many little secrets and unlockables that you just don't get in many AAA games anymore, sadly. Better yet, Doom Slayer's backstory is fleshed out without ever being a distracting focus. It's just there to make you feel even more metal. The real brilliance of Doom Eternal though is just how, 1 second, it really makes you feel like the Doom Slayer, an immovable object who only keeps moving forward. The peerless soundtrack by Mick Gordon is the perfect partner for it all, so it's a shame that we won't be seeing them work together ever again. Undoubtedly one of the best FPS titles ever made, this game proves that Doom is eternal. Your heart probably won't be long for this world after playing its DLC though. 2 Marauders, Hugo? 2? That's insane. Number 9, Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice. What, it's another From Software game? You'd almost think we enjoy the pain or something. Even without the obvious similarities to regular Soulsborne, Sekiro stands on its own merits, a deeply challenging stealth action hybrid where your reflexes are vital. Playing as the quiet guardian to the divine heir during a reimagining of the Sengoku period of ancient Japan, you are armed with the special shinobi prosthetic to give you an upper hand, on enemies, as well as the ability to resurrect. You better believe it doesn't make the game a cakewalk though. Also, don't forget that some bosses can resurrect themselves, and it will drive you bananas. Coughing sound. Sekiro is absolutely the hardest of all of the From Software games, as there's such little cheese or co-op to lean back on that you'll be hearing the clanging of swords in your nightmares, and apparently gunshots. Shin, you cheap little absolute stupid hat. This is one PS4 game you shouldn't let slink into the shadows. It's even an Activision game that doesn't have any predatory nonsense. We still don't trust they won't add a Shadow Pass or something like it one of these days. Number 8, Titanfall 2. Even if it might not have hit some, frankly, kinda dumbass sales expectations, it's hard not to look at Titanfall 2 as anything but a success. Respawn's follow-up managed to win back a lot of goodwill that its predecessor squandered, helped in no small part by one of the best FPS single-player campaigns seen in years. Jack and BT's bromance feels kinda like it's already been the template for countless other unlikely duo stories in gaming, but none have matched the heart of the relationship here. We won't spoil anything of course, but can someone please pick up that damn helmet one of these days? And it kept on giving once the credits rolled on the story too. Its multiplayer offers some of the purest, most addictive shooting we've ever had the pleasure of hooting and hollering at like the gibbons we are. It does a wonderful job of making you feel like an utter badass. Zipping through the air, wall running and wreaking destruction inside a Titan always feels fresh and exhilarating. And hey, if you really hate yourself, you can also play Apex Legends right after, which is set in the same universe and keeps constantly winking at the camera about its connection to Titanfall without ever doing anything meaningful with it. But we Titanfall fans just keep on biting because we're just gonna keep on loving these games. Number 7, Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight can be a bit of a hard sell for those used to the high fidelity dramatics of most modern AAA games. Make no mistake though, stick with it and allow yourself to really dive down deep into Hollow Nest, and Team Cherry's indie darling might become your next big obsession. They've got a dude who literally dives into poo as the most likable guy across the whole game, and we're supposed to boo him, but we're literally obsessed with him. A challenging Metroidvania with an absolutely staggering amount of content and lore to unpack, Hollow Knight sets you as a small unassuming character with unclear motivations and background who comes to take on massive importance to the decaying world around him. Often billed as a Souls-like, perhaps not correctly, Hollow Knight may feature simple gameplay on the surface, but its tight platforming, tough bosses, gorgeous hand-drawn visuals and gradually expanding powers make it a game of constant surprises. One of the biggest surprises of all, only 4 people worked on this game. We'll stop bugging you to play this game now. Instead we're gonna go bug Team Cherry for a release date for Silk Song, whichever decade it may come out in. Number 6, Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 promised to show that Rockstar were no longer content to sit around on their laurels with GTA Online, but did it deliver? Apart from some controls that take some getting used to, Red Dead Redemption 2 offers the kind of attention to detail that is frankly still in a league of its own. How about the fact that there's an entire animal ecosystem that exists without your input? The fact that Arthur can talk to pretty much anyone across the entire map? Your boat sinking if you shoot holes into it? There's so much here that you could play through the giant story twice, no, maybe 5-10 times and still barely scratch the surface. When you're done skinning everything or completing the many side quests, the story of Red Dead Redemption 2 is also something that you won't be able to forget in a hurry. Arthur Morgan is an exceptional protagonist and every inch the perfect stand-in for John Marston as he anchors a haunting tale of the end of Outlaws that is surprisingly emotive. Once Red Dead Redemption 2 has you, say goodbye to pretty much everything else, including normal-sized horseballs in cold weather. Number 5, What Remains of Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch isn't going to be for everyone, and the fact that it beats out Red Dead is probably going to annoy the Church of Horseballs. It's short and fairly basic in the gameplay department, but if you can allow it, the game will leave a lasting impact on you. It's been quite a while since we last played it, and yet it's never far from our minds. Edith Finch is a modern fable, a bittersweet tale of family and loss that will have at least one story that you can connect to. While you could easily and somewhat lazily pigeonhole it as a walking simulator, that really doesn't do it justice. It's a moving, deeply affecting few hours with so many stories, all beautifully told, that seem like they come from a personal place for the developers. All of the tragedies you unfurl in the seemingly cursed Finch household land in different, stunning ways. But it's Lewis's sad shift at the cannery that will stick long with you in particular. We really don't want to say too much, as Edith Finch is a game that you're really better off experiencing completely fresh for yourself, but just know that if Giant Sparrow never make another game, and it's looking like they may not after 7 years of pretty much nothing, it's one hell of an epitaph. Number 4, Elden Ring. Few games dominated the gaming conversation quite like Elden Ring did in 2022, and while it may be best played on PS5, Elden Ring still proved that the PS4 has plenty of unforgettable experiences to offer for those willing to put the time in and inevitably lose a billion runes. While not a grand reinvention of the Soulsborne formula, Miyazaki please, we saw what you did here, you scamp. Elden Ring represents From Software putting everything they've learned and mastered on all their other projects while also contemporizing and streamlining a lot of their harsher edges. That unmistakably obtuse side is still there, meaning that you're going to have to figure out a lot of things for yourself, like the fact that hugging is a sin apparently. But this is their most accessible project yet, Deracine not included of course, sorry, Deracine Hive, that's also somehow their deepest. The Lands Between is one of the most compelling open worlds in quite some years, the breadth of role-playing options is simply hard to match, and the combat gives you more tools to still mess everything up with than ever before. Elden Ring is an absolute must-play, and then once you've crawled your way from Lost Grace to Lost Grace, you can play its pretty massive DLC which comes with a whole bakery of humble pies for you to scoff. Number 3, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. As a game so densely packed with content and unicorns if you catch our drift, The Witcher 3 is a role-playing game that's going to tide you over for a long time. Having sunk over 100 hours into the main game and Hearts of Stone with Blood and Wine, its second expansion DLC still to tuck into, we don't have to say goodbye to Geralt anytime soon. Which is good because we managed to get the worst possible ending. It's nearly a decade later and we're still not over it. We will never be over it. If you like anything Bethesda has ever done but just wanted them to lean all the way back into the role-playing aspect of their role-playing games, take a look at CD Projekt Red's fantasy epic and prepare to say goodbye to your family for a couple of months. Be sure to check out the Family Matters side quest as soon as you can. That thing is a masterpiece. And most of the side quests really, and a lot of the writing, and the nice clothes, they're pretty cool as well. The Witcher 3 is not just one of the best games on PS4, nor is it just one of the best single-player games. It's also one of the best of all time. I still can't replay it after leaving Geralt in that fucking cabin though. Number 2, God of War 2018. The previous generation of gaming was all about revitalising old franchises, putting a spin on well-worn conventions and delivering something completely different while still being faithful. God of War is possibly the most successful and accomplished example of that. A game that not only does its name justice, but also stands above as the best entry in the series to date. Apologies to God of War Betrayal, you had a good run there, you had a good run. Featuring a storyline worth investing your time and heart into, a massive overhaul of the combat to make it more of an action RPG, and a father-son dynamic at its centre that's completely captivating, God of War on PS4 should be one of your first buys as a new PS4 owner. From a technical, visual and narrative viewpoint, God of War is certainly one of the best games on the console, and let's be honest, of all time. The next generation certainly got off on the right foot too for the franchise with the release of Ragnarok, which also came to PS4 but had a couple of missteps here and there. Cough, really long and boring cow section, coughing sounds. But the first redemption arc of Kratos is a true masterpiece. However, God of War didn't have any fancy hats, so the best PS4 game of all time simply has to be number 1, Bloodborne. From Software's Bloodborne was one of the first essential PS4 games, sorry, the order 1886, and it still is, so much so that expectations for a rumoured sequel are astonishingly high. You know, your game is damn good when even 30 frames per second and a pretty up and down performance in general can't stop fans from visiting Yharnam again and again and again and again. And also making it into a kart racer? Although not a million miles away from the Dark Souls experience we know and are abused by, Bloodborne took what made the series so great, gave it a quicker, more ruthless edge and made something that felt different but absolutely still belonged to the From Software school of pain. Whereas Dark Souls is about slowly pushing forward and taking your time, Bloodborne is all about powering forward and literally using the blood of your enemies to keep you alive. If you think that's kinda metal, try to unfurl the twisty wild world of Yharnam and what the f this guy's problem is, and not get lost in probably the best, most squid-centered story out of everything From Software has ever done. Hope persists that we might see a Bloodborne sequel, or even just a remaster or a remake for the PlayStation 5, so play this masterpiece and join the millions of us huddled around the copium tank. Be sure to pick up its Game of the Year edition, which comes with DLC to extend your suffering. There's no way you won't get something out of it. Placenta. And that was our video looking at the best PS4 games of all time. What was too high? What was too low? What did we miss out? Be sure to let us know down below. I've been Jimmy for Cultured Vultures, and thank you for watching.